everyone. Welcome into the Flippin Hippos YouTube channel. I'm Star the Flippin Hippo. And today we're going to talk about some backup plans for any and everything that could go wrong with your reselling business. If you tuned into my live show last night, we talked about stocking up on inventory in case of another shutdown, which I kind of feel seems pretty inevitable, at least where we live. A lot of places are closing down the schools already and preparing for another lockdown. And you don't want to be stuck without inventory. If 2020 has taught us anything, it's that anything can happen and you need to be prepared for any and all contingencies. If you live in a place with cold weather, you could be dealing with being snowed in or icy roads for days or weeks on end and unable to get out and get inventory. So it's not just like having a shutdown or another shutdown that could keep you from having enough stuff to list. There's a lot of things that can happen as far as the weather. We had the wildfires in the summer. Just anything can really happen. So if I've learned anything in 2020, it's to always have a nice stockpile. And you don't have to call it a death pile. It can just be a stockpile or a money pile. Backup inventory, just stuff around the house enough that if you can't get out to source, you will still have items to list. But there's tons of other stuff that can go wrong. And these can go wrong any time of the day, any time of the year, any time of the week. And what actually made us think about this, one, we are preparing for another shutdown. If you watched last night, I talked a lot about how much inventory we've been getting. So it's kind of on our mind anyway. But I dropped our scale the other day. This is the scale we have. If you don't have this scale, it is the best scale ever for any reseller to ever have. There is an affiliate link in the description box down below that'll take you right to Amazon and you can purchase it. It's no extra cost to you, but a couple pennies from the sale go to us and help support the channel if you use our affiliate links. But the reason I love this scale is because we've had it for about 4 or 5 years. And I have dropped this so many times. And a lot of times when I drop it, there's these little screws that come out. And this whole top piece will come off and like fly across the room. And then you've got little screws on the floor. And then Keith has to put the whole thing back together. But it always works. And I've dropped it a lot, like probably more than a dozen times. And it breaks apart, but then it, put it back together and it still works. But it was just like the other day I dropped it again. Keith was putting it back together. And he said, I never really thought about it, but what happens on the day that you drop this and break it again and it actually doesn't work anymore? And either the stores are shut down or it's snowing or we can't get out. What are we going to do? Do we have a backup plan for a scale? And I said, well, yeah, I have the bathroom scale. It's got a digital readout. It probably won't be as accurate to the ounce as this, because if you weigh something on this, it's 1.9 ounces or 2.6, like down to the decimal. The bathroom scale might not be as accurate, but it is a digital readout, and we could put items on there if we had to weigh them to get them ready to ship and print the label out, or even just to weigh them to put the weight and the listing when we're listing. So that's kind of like a backup plan. I don't know that I would necessarily go out and buy a second scale to have on hand just in case, because this one has shown that it can take a beating and just keep on, take a licking and keep on ticking, right? So I don't want to have like a backup scale. I don't want to spend our money on that. But if this were to, break and not work anymore, I guess we would use the bathroom scale as kind of like a contingency plan until we could get another one of these ordered off of Amazon and delivered to the house. But then we started thinking about all of the other things that could go wrong. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. We've already talked about the scale. So think about that. Like, do you have a backup if your scale breaks? Do you have a bathroom scale? Do you have a friend with a scale? Because if you take your packages to the post office to be weighed and you pay for the postage there, you're going to be paying more than what you pay on eBay. We get a huge discount as sellers on eBay. The discount gets bigger if you're top rated seller plus. a lot of you use Pirate Ship and you get a huge discount on there. And our first class goes up to 16 ounces on eBay. If you go to the post office and something weighs 14 ounces, you're going to be paying priority rates because the actual customer weights go up to 13 ounces. So the retail prices at the post office, anything over 13 ounces is priority. So anytime you have to go in there to the actual post office and have them weigh your items for you and print your labels or whatever, you're going to be paying a lot more. You ideally always want to be doing your labels at home with your own scale. So make sure you have some kind of a backup in place just in case your scale breaks. One of the number one things I think about, especially where we live, where we do deal with inclement weather and snow and big storms during the winter, is power outages. What happens if you wake up one morning and you have no power? Your laptop might be charged enough to still work without being plugged in, but if your printer doesn't have a place to plug in, you can't print out your labels. So you would be stuck again with maybe having to go to the post office and do it, which is not ideal. So if your power's out and you can't plug in your printer to print your labels, or let's say your laptop is dead, let's say your phone is dead, let's say you only have desktop computers, what are you going to do? Do you have a plan in place? Do you have friends or family that's perhaps maybe on another power grid? So if you lost power, they would still have it, and maybe you could go to their house, pack up your laptop or your computer, pack up your printer, pack it all up, go to their house and use their electricity basically so you can plug in your printer and print your labels. Do you have a library close by? Do you have a Starbucks or a bookstore? Now, all of this is going to be contingent upon the shutdowns. I don't really see us able to go to the Starbucks or the bookstores and sit at a table like we used to if things are shut down and they're limiting capacity and dine in, eating, or coffee drinking. But during normal times, you could always go to a library. They have internet, they have printers, they have places where you can plug in your laptops and your printers, and Starbucks and most bookstores will have it too. But barring that, just make sure you have some friends or family nearby that know that you might have to come over and print out labels if you ever lose power. The other thing that could go out, of course, is the internet. So if you wake up one day and your internet is out and your power is still on, you could possibly hook up your phone through a hotspot to your laptop, but I want to put a disclaimer on that. Just check with your carrier before you do it. A lot of companies do offer the hotspots, some don't. A lot of them do offer the hotspots, but they charge you out the nose, like really expensive rates if you use your hotspot. Ours is grandfathered in on an unlimited clause, so well, I don't think it's unlimited. I think it's just so much data that we're allowed to use that I would never hit it if I'm only using my hotspot for emergencies. So check with your carriers now before the emergency happens. Like, have these plans in place. These are contingency plans. These are backup plans, and plans are supposed to be implemented and in place before the actual emergency happens. You want to be ready for it. So check with your phone carrier now. See if you have a hotspot on your phone. Make sure you know how to use it. Make sure you know how to hook up your computer to the hotspot. It's pretty simple. Most phones that do offer it, and you're not going to be paying too much. You can either ask your carrier when you call to see if you have it available to you, or you can just Google it and find a step-by-step process to hook it up. It's really simple. But don't do it until you've checked your rates, because I don't want any of you to be like, well, Star told me to hotspot, and then you get a $500 phone bill, and then you're mad at me. So make sure you check with your phone company how much it's going to cost you and how much data you have. But have that knowledge ahead of time. So if your internet's out, that's an opportunity or an option for you to use the internet. Again, same with a power outage. You could always go to a friend's house, family members, the library. There's lots of places where you can hook up to the internet. The only thing is you're going to also need a power source if you're taking your printer to print your labels. What happens if your printer breaks or your printer isn't working? Do you have a backup printer? We have our regular, Canon paper printer. So in a pinch, if we couldn't print out our labels on our thermal printer, we have an arc scan. In case you are wondering, I love my arc scan. We have an arc scan thermal printer that prints out the labels, but we do have a regular printer that prints with paper and ink. Just it's not ideal, but if our printer broke or wasn't working for some reason, then we would be able to print out the paper sheets, and it would be a pain in the butt because we have to print them one by one, and we would have to cut them and tape them to the packages. But in the case of an emergency, it's better than nothing. It's better than paying the postal rates. So I guess if we had to, we could print them out, cut them, and tape them on. That's an option for an emergency. And if one of our computers broke, think about that, guys. What if one of your computers broke or had a Windows update and then just wouldn't boot up after that? It's not unheard of. It happens to people all the time. Especially with older models, if you have older desktops or older laptops, that sometimes they just won't boot up or they just won't turn on or something gets corrupted in the hard drive. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong with computers. So make sure you have some kind of backup. Even if you only have, I know some folks can use a tablet to connect to their eBay and to their printer to print out their labels. Just make sure you have some kind of backup in your house. We're huge dorks, so we have I think we have 5 desktop computers and 3 or 4 laptops floating around here that we could use if we had to. Obviously, we have our updated and best ones that we use all the time, but we do have older computers and other desktops that we could use if we had to. But if you only have one computer, make sure you have some kind of a backup. I know some folks can print labels from their phone. I've never done it, but I know it's an option, maybe something you want to look into. If you only have one computer or one laptop in your house, you may want to figure out, if you had to in an emergency, could you get on your eBay on your phone and print out your labels? Do you have an extra printer? As far as do you have a thermal printer and a regular printer? Do you have a library near you where you could go and use their printer? Yes, it would be paper and you have to cut and tape, but again, these are all just for in case of emergency options. So make sure that, you're just thinking ahead of time before we get into the midst of winter. I would start planning now. Again, 2020 has taught us that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So just start thinking about all of these things now. What if the power's out, the internet is down, my printer doesn't work, my computer doesn't work? What do I have as a backup? Where can I go to use these things to get the internet, to get a power source? If your camera or your phone, whatever you're using for your photos, decided to stop working, do you have an alternate way to take pictures? Do you have an old phone laying around that's not connected to a phone line per se or a phone number, but you can still use it for photographs? Do you have a spouse or a child whose phone you could borrow for the day just to get the photos taken? Do you have an old camera laying around? Do you have a contingency plan for your photos? Because if you can't get photographs, you can't list. So that should be something you're thinking about as well. And then also, I'm going to mention it one more time because I feel like it's so important. Make sure you have backup inventory. If you get stuck in your house or you can't get out to get inventory, make sure you have enough to work on for a couple of weeks. We've always tried to build up a death pile for the winter and then tried to knock it out in the spring and not have one over the summer because of where we live. There are times where we just, whether we can't get out or we just don't want to because the roads are really bad or it's snowing or just too cold. But we've always tried to knock it out by the spring. And I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm always going to have a couple hundred items laying around because you never know what's going to happen. But just, I've probably missed some things. If you guys can think of some things that we use in our everyday business that if it suddenly didn't work or was broken, would put a real wrench in our process and something that we should think of a backup plan for. If I missed anything, let me know down in the comments. We can talk about it and come up with some plans. But just kind of go through your own head of everything you use and everything you need and where you could go to get these things to work for you if you had to. All right, guys, make sure you hit the thumbs up before you leave. It really helps the channel. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Help us feed a hungry hippo. Don't forget to join our Facebook group. It is called Flippin Hippos Reseller Pod. You can search for it on Facebook or use the link in the description box down below. Until next time, go get your contingency plans and your backup plans ready and in place. Be productive. Make some money. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Y'all are the best. Bye.